She called him Dad, and the billionaire CEO's world stopped. Rain hits the windows like gunfire as guests sip champagne under crystal lights. Talia Brooks rushes through the ballroom, trying to keep her 6-year-old daughter close. She's just here to do her job, not to be seen. But when the man on stage, Marcus Sterling, billionaire and her former boss, locks eyes with her, the room goes silent. His voice cracks mid-sentence. The girl beside Talia laughs, and something in him freezes. Same eyes, same smile. His world tilts. He steps off the stage, forgetting the crowd, forgetting the cameras. 6 years ago, he walked away from her. Now he's staring at the little girl who might be his. And she has no idea. What happens when a man who thought he had everything discovers the one thing he never knew he lost? His own daughter. Tell me where you're watching from. This story is just getting started. Marcus left the gala long after the last toast, but her face didn't leave him. The image kept replaying, the woman's startled eyes, the small girl's laughter, and that flash of blue that felt like a mirror he wasn't ready to face. His driver waited outside in the rain, but Marcus didn't speak. The city lights blurred through the windshield, each drop on the glass catching fragments of memory he'd tried to bury 6 years ago. When he finally reached his penthouse, the silence was heavy. The kind that reminded him that for all his power, there was no one waiting. He poured a drink, didn't touch it, and stared at his reflection in the dark glass. Same eyes, same color, the same cold distance that used to belong to his father. Sleep never came. The next morning, he replayed the moment again. The way the girl smiled, the way Talia's hand hovered protectively near her. He tried to convince himself it was coincidence. Genetics were cruel like that. But then he remembered the timing. 6 years ago. The charity event they'd both worked on before everything collapsed. The night he vanished into lawyers, headlines, and silence. He couldn't leave it alone. The next evening, when the gala crew was packing up, Marcus showed up unannounced. The staff froze at the sight of him, the billionaire who rarely appeared without cameras or a security wall. But he didn't care. He found Talia backstage, crouched beside a crate of glass centerpieces, her hair pinned messily, her dress replaced by jeans and a t-shirt. She looked up, startled. Marcus. Her tone wasn't surprised, just tired, like she'd prepared for this. I wanted to thank you, he said. The words sounded clumsy, useless. The event was, well done. Her nod was polite. Empty. Appreciate it. Silence stretched. A fan hummed overhead. He noticed her hands trembling slightly as she gathered ribbon and tape. You didn't stay long, she said finally. Had to leave early. I saw you stop mid-speech. He froze. You noticed. I was standing right in front of you. Her voice wasn't harsh, but it cut deeper than any accusation. She turned back to her work, refusing to meet his eyes. Marcus stepped closer. That little girl, she's yours? Talia's jaw tightened. Yes. She's beautiful. Thank you. How old? 6. The number hit him like a note struck too hard. He masked his reaction, but she saw it. Her next words came sharp, defensive. She's fine. She doesn't need anything from you. I didn't offer anything, he said quietly. I just asked. Marcus, don't. He didn't move. Her eyes. Talia dropped the ribbon. Don't say it. I have to. She turned then, anger flickering through restraint. You think you can show up after 6 years and start connecting dots that aren't yours to connect? I'm just asking. No. You're remembering. There's a difference. The words stung. He tried to speak, but she lifted a hand to stop him. Whatever you're thinking, leave it. I've built a life without explanations. Don't come and rewrite it. He wanted to argue, but the weight of her voice silenced him. So he nodded once, slowly, then left. But as he walked out, he caught sight of a photo taped near the exit. Staff posing after the event. Talia in the middle, smiling despite exhaustion. And beside her, Lila, in that same pink coat. Her eyes, unmistakable. He tore his gaze away before anyone noticed. That night, he couldn't focus on a single report. The board's emails blurred. He stared at numbers, but all he saw was that face. That small, certain smile. He told himself he was being foolish, but the thought wouldn't die. Days later, he saw the photo again, this time online. The foundation's social media post thanked the staff. Lila's name was in the caption. Lila Brooks, junior helper, age 6. The post had 10 likes, 1 share. Harmless. Except for him. His assistant, Aaron, noticed the way he froze. "Sir." "Nothing," he said. But he saved the image. That night, alone, he sent it to a private contact, a doctor who owed him a favor. "I need a test done." Quietly. The doctor replied within the hour. "You'll need a sample." Marcus stared at the screen. He thought of the gala, the air she breathed, the glass she'd held. Then he remembered the champagne flutes on the table near her seat. He still had one. He'd absent-mindedly carried it backstage before their talk. It was in his car. He didn't even know why he'd kept it. Now he did. He sent it the next morning. The wait felt endless. He told no one. He buried himself in meetings, mergers, meaningless chatter. But beneath the calm surface, his thoughts spiraled. When the envelope finally arrived, he sat alone in his office before opening it. The skyline burned orange outside the window. He stared at his name on the seal. He broke it open. 99.9% match. He didn't move. The words swam on the page. His throat went dry. Every sound faded. The clock, the city, his own breath. 4 years, he'd thought the scandal had cost him his company, his reputation. He hadn't realized it had cost him something human. Something irreplaceable. He closed his eyes. The memory came uninvited, that night years ago, before everything went wrong. The rain, the laughter, her voice telling him to slow down, to stop letting the world define him. He hadn't listened. By the time he looked up from rebuilding his empire, she was gone. He'd thought it was her choice. Now he knew better. He drove to her apartment that evening. He didn't call first. He couldn't. The building was small, old but cared for. The kind of place where neighbors still greeted each other. A world far from his steel towers. Talia opened the door halfway, surprised. "Marcus." He held the envelope out. "We need to talk." Her eyes flicked to it, then to him. "What did you do?" "I needed to know." She looked tired, not angry yet, just resigned. "You had no right." "I know." "Then why?" He hesitated. "Because I saw myself in her. And I couldn't ignore it." Her voice dropped. "You tested my child?" "I didn't mean to invade your life like that, but you didn't give me a choice." "There's always a choice," she said. "You just don't like hearing no." He exhaled. "I needed the truth." "And what now?" You think truth fixes 6 years of silence?" He didn't answer. She folded her arms, steadying herself. "You disappeared, Marcus. I wrote, I called, I begged your assistant to tell you. But every door slammed shut. You were too busy saving your name to care that I was pregnant." His stomach turned. "I never knew. I tried," she said, her voice breaking. "Your legal team blocked me. They said you wanted nothing personal interfering with the case. I believed them. I had to move on." He took a step closer. "You think I would have ignored you if I'd known?" "I don't know what you would have done," she said. "Back then, you were a storm. Everything you touched was about control, about winning. I was trying to survive. So was I." The words hung heavy between them. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. "You should have told me after." "I did," she said quietly. 3 years ago. I sent another letter. No reply." He closed his eyes. "I never saw it." "Of course you didn't. You live behind walls built by people who protect your comfort." He didn't defend himself. He couldn't. Lila's voice drifted from the hallway. "Mom!" Talia turned quickly. "Go back to your room, sweetheart." "Who's that?" "No one, baby. Just a work friend." Marcus's chest tightened at the word. "Friend." Lila peeked from behind the doorway, her eyes curious, her curls framing her face. For a heartbeat, they stared at each other. Blue meeting blue. She smiled shyly. "Hi." He forced a smile. "Hi." Talia placed a hand on her shoulder. "Bedtime." Lila nodded, still watching him as she disappeared down the hall. Marcus swallowed hard. "She's amazing. She's my life." He nodded. "I want to be part of it." Her head shook slowly. "No. You don't just walk in and claim what you abandoned." "I didn't abandon her. I didn't even know. But now you do. And that changes everything." "I can help," he said. "I can make things easier." "She doesn't need easier. She needs peace." "Talia, I'm not trying to buy her." "Then what are you trying to do?" "Be her father." Her eyes flashed with anger. "You can't just decide that. I already have." The firmness in his voice startled even him. Talia stepped back, hurt flickering behind her composure. "You're not the man I remember." He softened. "No. I'm worse. But I'm trying." She didn't respond. He looked around the small apartment, the school drawings on the fridge, the tiny shoes near the door, the warmth he'd never felt in his own home. He set the envelope on the table. "Keep it. I don't want to fight you with papers. I just needed to see you face to face." She glanced at it but didn't touch it. "And what now?" "I'll respect your space. But I'm not disappearing again." "Marcus, I missed 6 years. I won't miss another day." He walked out before she could stop him. Outside, the rain started again. It felt almost like the same storm from that night years ago. He stood on the curb, drenched, watching light spill from her window. A small shadow passed. Lila, jumping onto her bed. His chest ached. In the following days, Marcus's world began to shift. Work meetings blurred. He stopped caring about quarterly growth or shareholder smiles. Instead, he found himself scrolling through charity pages, community photos, anywhere her name might appear. He wasn't sure what he was looking for. Maybe proof that she was real, that he hadn't imagined her laughter. One evening, he caught himself drafting a message to Talia. He deleted it, wrote again, deleted it again. Nothing sounded right. Everything sounded selfish. By the end of the week, he'd made his decision. He couldn't undo the past, but he could choose not to run anymore. He called his lawyer. "I need to make legal arrangements." "For what?" "My daughter." The line went silent. "You're sure?" "I have proof. But I don't want to fight. I want permission to be present." "Marcus, this could become public." "I don't care." When he hung up, he felt lighter. For the first time in years, he wasn't acting for investors, or press, or damage control. He was acting for something that mattered. That night, he stood by his window again. Below, the city pulsed with noise, but inside, the world was still. He could almost hear her voice, Lila's tiny "hi," echoing in his mind. He smiled, just barely. He didn't know how to fix what he'd broken. But he knew one thing. He wasn't leaving again. And this time, no amount of resistance would stop him. Marcus vows to be part of his daughter's life, no matter how much Talia resists. Marcus didn't wait for permission. The morning after his decision, he began showing up. Not loudly, not with cameras or drivers, just quietly. Sometimes outside Lila's school, sometimes near the park where Talia walked her on weekends. Always at a distance. Always unsure if he was doing the right thing. The first time Lila saw him again, she waved. It was small, almost cautious. But it was enough. He brought flowers for the school fundraiser the next week. Not a flashy donation, just a gesture. Talia spotted him before the principal did. She walked straight over, calm but sharp. "You can't keep doing this." "I'm not causing trouble," he said. "You're causing questions." From her. From everyone. He nodded. "I just wanted to help." "Then let me handle it." Her voice was tired, but not cruel. She picked up the flowers and handed them back. "Don't make her world complicated. She deserves quiet." He looked down, fingers tightening on the bouquet. "She deserves more than quiet. Not from you." That stung. But he didn't argue. He just turned and left. 2 days later, a delivery truck pulled up to Talia's apartment. She opened the door to a new refrigerator, groceries, and an envelope marked "paid in full." She called him instantly. "You think you can fix things with money?" He sighed. "I think I can make life easier." "It's not your place to. It's not charity. It feels like guilt." He paused. "Maybe it is." She hung up before he could say more. For 6 years, Talia had survived every bill, every night shift, every scraped knee. She didn't need his wealth. What she needed was control, the one thing she'd fought to keep since he left. But Marcus didn't stop. He sent a letter next, handwritten, awkward, real. He told her he didn't know what a father was supposed to do, but he was willing to learn. He didn't ask for forgiveness, only a chance to show up without being turned away. Talia read it twice, then hid it in a drawer. She couldn't bring herself to tear it up. Lila noticed the tension. Kids always do. One afternoon, at the park, Lila asked, "Mom, who's that man again?" Talia hesitated. "Just someone Mommy used to know. He keeps watching us." "He's being polite." Lila tilted her head. "He smiled at me." Talia forced a smile. "Then smile back. And keep playing." But Lila didn't forget. The next weekend, when Marcus passed them near the swings, she called out, "Hi again!" He froze, unsure if he was allowed to respond. Talia's warning look stopped him. He nodded politely, forcing himself to walk away. But the moment didn't go unnoticed. A man with a telephoto lens across the street snapped 5 perfect shots: the billionaire, the woman, and the child smiling up at him. By morning, the photos were everywhere. Billionaire's secret family? The story spread faster than wildfire. By noon, reporters were outside Talia's apartment. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. The school called to say photographers were at the gate. She stormed into Sterling Enterprises that same day. The receptionist froze as she marched through the lobby, security trailing helplessly behind. Marcus was in a board meeting when the doors flew open. She didn't care who was watching. "What did you do?" He stood, startled. "Talia." "Don't Talia me. You turned my life into a headline." "I didn't leak anything," he said quickly. "I swear." "Then how did they find us?" "I don't know." She slammed her phone on the table. "They're camped outside my building. My daughter's face is online. She's 6, Marcus." He looked stricken. "I'll handle it." "You can't handle this. This is your world, not mine." The board members exchanged nervous glances. One cleared his throat. "Mr. Sterling, perhaps we should." "Stay," Marcus said. His voice was quiet but firm. "They can listen." He turned back to Talia. "You're right. This is my fault. But I can fix it." "By paying someone off again," she snapped. "No. By telling the truth." Before she could stop him, he pressed the intercom. "Aaron, schedule a press statement for tomorrow morning." Her eyes widened. "Marcus, no." "Yes." He faced her, his voice lower now. "If they're going to talk, I'll tell them myself. I won't let them define what she is to me." She stepped closer, shaking. "You don't even know what she is to you. You met her twice." "I know enough to care." "Then protect her by staying out of sight." "I can't." The argument burned through the room like electricity. When she finally turned to leave, her voice broke. "You say you want to help, but you only know how to control." Her words stayed with him long after she was gone. The next morning, cameras swarmed the front of Sterling Enterprises. Reporters shouted questions, flashes blinded, microphones reached over barricades. Marcus adjusted his tie once, took a breath, and stepped out. His PR team tried to stop him. "We can spin this," one whispered. "No spin," he said. "Just truth." He walked to the podium, ignoring the shouted chaos. When the noise settled, he began. 6 years ago, I lost something I didn't know I had. I was too busy protecting my company, too afraid to face what mattered most. I've learned that success means nothing if you fail the people who once believed in you." He hesitated, then continued. "The child in those photos, her name is Lila. She's bright, kind, and curious. And she's my daughter." The crowd erupted. Questions flew. He raised a hand. "I'm not here to defend my past. I'm here to earn my future. I've made mistakes, and I'm still learning what it means to be a father. But that's what I intend to be." The press ate it up. Within hours, the internet flooded with clips. Billionaire admits to secret daughter in emotional statement. Marcus Sterling breaks down at press conference. His stock dipped slightly, then climbed higher than before. Vulnerability, it seemed, sold better than perfection. But not everyone was impressed. Talia watched from her apartment, fury and heartbreak colliding. The man who'd shattered her privacy had turned it into a redemption arc. She called him again that night. "You made my daughter a headline." "I made myself the target," he said. "They'll move on." "You don't get it. I don't want her life measured by your last name." He was quiet for a long time. "You're right. I didn't ask what you wanted." "No, you didn't. I can't undo this," he said softly. "But I can make sure she's safe." "And what does that mean?" "It means I'll make public boundaries. No interviews. No photos. No access." Talia didn't answer immediately. "And what do you get in return?" "Nothing. Just a chance to prove I can be better." For once, she didn't hang up. The following week, he kept his distance. But he didn't disappear. Instead, he showed up in smaller, quieter ways. A box of art supplies for Lila, labeled only from a friend. A library card with her name already registered. A note that said, "Every dream starts somewhere. Keep drawing." Talia found the note in Lila's backpack. Her instinct was to throw it away, but she couldn't. It wasn't manipulation. It was care, clumsy but real. Then one Saturday, when she took Lila to the park again, Marcus was there. No suit, no bodyguards, just a man sitting alone on a bench, feeding birds. Lila spotted him first. "Mom, that's him." Talia froze. "Stay close." Lila ran ahead anyway. "Hi." Marcus smiled. "Hey, you." She climbed onto the bench beside him like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You come here a lot." "Maybe I will now." "Why?" "Because someone I like comes here too." She giggled. "Who?" He leaned in. "That's a secret." Talia approached slowly. "You shouldn't be here." "I didn't know you'd come." "Liar." He smiled faintly. "Half liar." Before she could argue, someone nearby gasped. A camera clicked. Then another. Within seconds, the same story reignited. Marcus Sterling reunites with secret daughter at City Park. By nightfall, the internet was flooded again. Talia called him, shaking. "Do you even care what this does to her?" "Yes," he said, his voice breaking. "More than you think." "Then stop showing up." "I can't stop caring." "Then you'll destroy us both." He didn't answer. The next morning, Marcus walked into his boardroom to silence. Every eye was on him. The headlines were still plastered across every screen. One director cleared his throat. "We're concerned, Marcus. This personal story is overshadowing the company." He leaned back in his chair. "Good. Maybe it's time something did." They stared at him. "Are you serious?" "I'm tired of pretending I'm made of steel. I'm human. If that scares investors, they can find another god to worship." The boardroom fell quiet. No one argued. That night, he sat in his office, lights dim, the city glowing below. He watched the replay of his own press conference, his voice raw, unfiltered. He'd spent years perfecting the image of strength. And now, for the first time, he saw the cost of it. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "She saw your video. She said you looked nervous. She liked it." He read it 3 times before realizing it was from Talia. He smiled. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. A few days later, a small package arrived at his penthouse. Inside was a drawing, 3 stick figures holding hands under a giant sun. In the corner, in careful handwriting, Lila. He pinned it to his office wall. When his assistant noticed, she smiled. "She's good. The best," he said quietly. The chaos around him began to calm. The press had moved on to newer scandals. His shareholders were soothed by his honesty. For once, the storm seemed to pass. And somewhere between meetings and headlines, he started thinking less like a CEO and more like a man trying to learn how to love again. The next weekend, he visited the park once more. No cameras this time. Just him, a blanket, and a small children's book in his hand. Lila ran up to him, laughing. "You came back. I said I would." Talia followed, cautious but calm. "You're brave, showing your face again." He smiled. "I've faced worse." She sat nearby, watching as he opened the book. His voice was shaky at first, then steadier. He told a story about a boy who built towers so tall he couldn't see the ground, until he realized the one thing worth seeing was right beside him the whole time. Lila clapped at the end. "That's a good story." Marcus grinned. "It's a true one." Talia met his eyes. For the first time, she didn't look away. Despite the chaos, Lila starts to warm to Marcus, charmed by his awkward kindness and bedtime stories about his lonely childhood. Marcus had never looked at his calendar the same way again. Meetings that once felt essential now looked meaningless beside the one word he'd added in sharp ink, Lila. He cleared entire afternoons, shifted calls to dawn hours, and pushed back investor lunches without apology. His assistant thought he'd lost focus. He hadn't. He'd just found the only thing worth focusing on. They watched Lila pick flowers, twirling them like trophies. The world around them felt still, like something delicate was starting to grow in the space between their words. A week later, Lila invited him to her school's art showcase. He cleared his entire calendar for it, ignoring a message from his CFO about a pending deal worth millions. He didn't care. He wanted to see his daughter's world. When Lila's drawing was unveiled, a simple crayon portrait of 3 people labeled me Mom and Dad. Marcus felt tears threaten. He hadn't cried in years. Not when he lost investors. Not when the media tore him apart. But this, a child's hand-drawn hope, broke every wall he'd built. After the event, parents congratulated him, assuming he and Talia were together. She corrected them politely, but he noticed the flicker of something in her eyes, something unsure. That night, Marcus walked home alone, but the word "Dad" kept echoing in his mind. He'd heard it once, yet it replayed endlessly. Each repetition made it more real. He sat in his penthouse surrounded by silence, staring at the photo he'd taken of Lila at the showcase. For the first time, the city lights outside didn't comfort him. They only reminded him of how empty everything had been before that small voice called him Daddy. He realized then that he wasn't chasing redemption anymore. He was chasing connection. And this time, he wasn't going to lose it. Days turned into weeks again, and Marcus learned that fatherhood wasn't about big moments. It was about small choices. Saying yes to ice cream before dinner. Listening when she talked about cartoons he didn't understand. Letting her braid his hair even when it hurt. Each act chipped away at the old version of him, the one who thought success was measured in stock prices. Talia saw the change. She caught him once standing in the rain, waiting for Lila outside school even though class had been delayed. He didn't leave until she came out, soaked but smiling. Later, when she offered him a towel, he just said, "She waited for me for 6 years." The least I can do is wait 10 minutes for her. That line stayed with her long after he left. The next weekend, they had dinner together for the first time. Just the three of them. Lila insisted they sit side by side, not across. Marcus helped her cut her food, laughing when she teased him for being too slow. It felt normal, almost too normal. After Lila went to bed, Talia lingered in the kitchen, washing dishes. Marcus leaned against the counter, watching her quietly. "You don't have to keep proving yourself," she said finally. He shook his head. "I'm not proving anything. I'm learning." She looked at him, unsure. Learning what? How to be a father. How to stay. The honesty in his voice silenced her. For once, there was no fight, no defense. Just truth. When he left that night, Talia stood at the door longer than usual, watching him walk to his car. She didn't stop him, but she didn't close the door right away either. Something about his presence lingered, a calm she hadn't felt in years. Upstairs, Lila stirred in her sleep and whispered, "Night, Daddy." Talia froze. It wasn't a question anymore. It was acceptance. She turned off the light, sat on the edge of her daughter's bed, and smiled faintly. The fear that had ruled her for years began to loosen its grip. Maybe Marcus wasn't here to take anything. Maybe he was here to give something back. Outside, Marcus sat in his car, watching the apartment window glow faintly through the rain. He thought of every moment that brought him here, every mistake, every lost chance. He whispered to himself, "Not this time." The word "Dad" replayed again in his mind, soft but unshakable. It didn't feel borrowed anymore. It felt earned. That night became the invisible line between who he was and who he was becoming. The next act would test how far he'd go to protect what he'd finally found. Marcus sat in the hospital waiting room, his sleeve rolled up, a bandage across his arm from the fall. Across from him, Talia sat with Lila asleep on her lap. The air between them was quiet, but the silence wasn't peaceful. It carried the weight of everything they hadn't said in 6 years. The accident had shaken them both. Lila was fine, just scared, but Talia couldn't shake the image of Marcus diving forward, catching her before she hit the marble steps. The look on his face haunted her. Pure fear, pure love. It didn't fit the image she'd built of him all these years, the image she needed to survive, a man too proud to care. Marcus kept glancing at them, the two people he now couldn't imagine his life without. Every few seconds, his hand twitched, like he wanted to reach out but didn't know how. When the nurse returned to check his dressing, Talia finally spoke. "You didn't have to come here every day." Her voice was low but steady. Marcus looked up. "You think I'm doing this out of guilt?" "I think you don't know what you're doing," she replied. "You keep showing up with gifts, promises, plans. You're trying to fix 6 years of silence with money." He blinked, as if she'd hit him. "You think I'm trying to buy her?" Talia shifted Lila's head gently, still asleep against her shoulder. "You don't mean to, but it's what you know. Power. Control. You don't understand what it's like to raise a child on your own, with nothing but your own strength to depend on." Marcus stood. "You think I don't understand?" His voice was calm, but something sharp ran beneath it. "You think I haven't lived with regret every single day since you walked out of my life?" "You didn't give me a choice," she shot back. "You disappeared. Your lawyers hung up on me. Your assistant told me never to contact you again. I was pregnant and terrified." He froze. He'd suspected it, but hearing it out loud cut through him. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. You didn't want to know, Talia whispered. The words landed hard. He sat back down, the fire leaving his voice. You're right. For a long time, they said nothing. Only the sound of the hospital's intercom filled the room, the kind of background noise people stop hearing after a while. Marcus leaned forward, elbows on his knees. My father was a cold man, he said quietly. He wasn't cruel, just empty. He built this company from nothing, but he gave nothing to anyone. I told myself I'd be different. I thought if I built something big enough, I'd feel whole. But all I did was become him. Talia watched him carefully. She'd never seen Marcus like this, stripped of polish, stripped of armor. Just a man, staring at his own failures. I didn't want to be like him, he said again. So I worked harder, earned more, pushed everyone away. When you left, I told myself it was for the best, that I was protecting you from the mess I'd made. But the truth is, I was just afraid. Talia's voice softened. Afraid of what? He looked at her. Of being enough. The honesty in his tone cracked something inside her. For 6 years she'd been angry. Angry that he hadn't called, angry that she'd had to explain to Lila why she didn't have a dad. But under that anger was exhaustion. A kind of loneliness no one saw. She took a breath, her voice trembling. I'm tired, Marcus. I've been doing this alone since I was 23. I've missed birthdays because I had to work double shifts. I've hidden tears so Lila wouldn't see me break. I don't want to be angry anymore, but I don't know how to stop. He nodded slowly, eyes glistening but steady. Then let me carry some of it. Not as a CEO, not as a savior, just as her father. For the first time since that night at the gala, Talia didn't have an answer ready. She wanted to push him away again, to keep control. But she could see in his face that this wasn't about power anymore. It was about change. When Lila stirred awake, Marcus smiled faintly. Hey, Peanut! The nickname slipped out naturally, and even Talia couldn't help the small smile that tugged at her lips. Lila rubbed her eyes. Daddy, can we go home? Marcus froze at the word. Talia noticed, too. But this time, she didn't correct her daughter. The next week, Marcus kept his distance. He didn't call or show up uninvited. Instead, a small package arrived at Talia's door. Inside was a simple card with one line. I meant what I said. I'll wait. For the first time, his silence didn't feel like abandonment. Felt like respect. But the outside world wasn't as forgiving. The media still buzzed about the secret daughter. Stockholders whispered about his emotional instability. His PR team begged him to issue a statement denying everything. He refused. When one reporter cornered him outside Sterling headquarters, shoving a microphone toward his face, Marcus stopped and said, "That little girl saved my life. That's all I'll ever say about it." Then he walked away. That clip went viral. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was raw. The man known for being unshakable suddenly looked human. At home, Talia watched the clip on her phone, her eyes filling. A few days later, Marcus invited them both to lunch at a quiet cafe. No bodyguards, no photographers. Just them. Lila spent most of the meal drawing on a napkin while the adults sat in careful silence. Finally, Talia spoke. "I saw what you said." He nodded. "I didn't plan it. I just meant it." Lila held up her napkin drawing. 3 stick figures holding hands under a blue sky. "That's us," she said proudly. Talia looked at Marcus, and for once, there was no anger, just understanding. Later, as they walked out, Talia stopped him by the car. "You've changed." Marcus smiled faintly. "Not yet. But I'm trying." The weeks that followed felt different. Marcus didn't flood her with grand gestures or lavish gifts. Instead, he showed up quietly. Parent-teacher meetings, doctor's appointments, Saturday mornings at the park. Talia watched him learning, awkwardly, patiently, earnestly. The man who once measured success in millions now measured it in minutes spent pushing a swing. Still, there were setbacks. One afternoon, when Marcus brought Lila home early, Talia found an expensive gift bag in the car, a bracelet clearly worth thousands. She crossed her arms. "We talked about this." He sighed. "I didn't buy it for her. She picked it for you." Talia hesitated. He wasn't lying. The tag had Lila's handwriting. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Because she said you never get surprises," he said. "She wanted to give you one." Talia looked down at the little gold bracelet, her reflection glinting in it. "I can't keep this." Marcus nodded. "Then don't. But don't tell her she was wrong to try." That night, after putting Lila to bed, Talia sat at the kitchen table, the bracelet beside her. She realized it wasn't about the money, it was about the gesture. A small act of kindness from a little girl who just wanted her parents to get along. The next morning, she wore it. Over time, their conversations grew easier. Marcus no longer filled silence with apologies. Talia no longer guarded every word. They talked about Lila's school projects, her favorite songs, the new foundation Marcus wanted to build for single parents. One evening, after dinner, Talia found herself standing by the window while Marcus helped Lila with homework. The sight hit her harder than she expected. For years, that image had lived only in her imagination, the family she'd wanted but never thought possible. Marcus looked up and caught her watching. He smiled, small and tired but real. Later, when Lila went to bed, Talia stayed behind. The night was quiet, the city hummed faint outside. "I was wrong," she said. Marcus turned to her. "About what?" "You," she said softly. "I thought you'd come back to make things harder. But you've made things easier." He exhaled. "I'm not used to easy." She gave a faint laugh. "Neither am I." For a while, neither spoke. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It felt like a pause before something new. Talia looked at him. "I'm still scared." He nodded. "So am I." And for the first time, fear didn't divide them. It united them. That night, when Marcus left, he paused at the door. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For letting me try." She smiled faintly. "Just don't stop." He didn't. In the months that followed, they learned to trust in small ways. Shared mornings, quiet car rides, laughter that didn't feel forced. The cracks in their past began to close, not because they pretended they didn't exist, but because they finally faced them together. Marcus had spent years believing strength meant control. Now, he knew it meant showing up even when you're terrified. And Talia, after years of surviving alone, finally understood she didn't have to be alone anymore. Their story hadn't reached its happy ending yet, but for the first time, it was finally heading toward one. The story now shifts from conflict to transformation, as Marcus and Talia begin to rebuild trust, learning that love doesn't erase the past, but it gives them the courage to face it together. Talia didn't agree right away. The idea of sitting in a room with Marcus, talking about the past she tried to bury, felt unbearable. But when Lila started waking up from nightmares, asking if her dad would disappear again, Talia finally said yes. The sessions began on a quiet Wednesday morning. The therapist's office was simple: a round table, a box of tissues, and 3 chairs that felt too close together. Marcus arrived early, sitting rigid, hands clasped tight. Talia came a few minutes later, Lila holding her hand. No words, just tension in the air thick enough to taste. The first few sessions were awkward. Marcus tried to control the conversation, like every boardroom he'd ever led. He spoke in complete sentences, logical, polished, practiced. Talia barely looked at him. The therapist, soft voice, patient eyes, stopped him mid-sentence one day. "You're explaining," she said, "not listening." That cut deeper than he expected. After that, Marcus started trying differently. He let silence hang instead of filling it. He looked at Talia when she spoke, not as the woman who once worked for him, but as the person who'd carried their daughter through every fever, every birthday, every lonely night. Lila sat between them most sessions, swinging her legs. Sometimes she drew on the little notepad the therapist gave her. Crayons, bright colors. One day she held up her picture proudly, 3 stick figures, all smiling. She'd written underneath, in uneven handwriting, "Mom, Dad, me." Marcus stared at it, frozen. He couldn't remember the last time he'd been drawn into someone's world like that, literally and emotionally. Later, Talia caught him staring at the paper as if it were made of glass. He smiled faintly. "She sees us as whole," he said quietly, "even when we're still learning how to be." Talia didn't answer. But that night, for the first time in years, she dreamed of peace instead of distance. The sessions stretched into months. Little things began to shift. Marcus stopped showing up in designer suits. He came in jeans and sneakers. Talia noticed how much younger he looked without the armor. He asked questions instead of giving answers. He learned when to speak and when to stay silent. One day, the therapist asked Talia to describe what being strong meant to her. She laughed. Tired, hollow. "It means pretending," she said. "Pretending you're fine when you're not. Pretending you're not scared when your daughter asks about her father. Pretending that silence is easier than disappointment." Marcus's throat tightened. He wanted to say sorry, but the therapist raised a hand. "Let her finish." Talia looked at him then, eyes red. "You don't know what it's like," she said. "Every time Lila asked why her dad wasn't around, I had to lie. I told her you were busy saving the world. But the truth is, you were gone. And I was the one who had to keep her believing you were good." Marcus's jaw clenched. His voice came out low, trembling. "I was lost, Talia. I thought success would fill the emptiness my father left behind. But it just built walls around me. I couldn't even see you through them." The room went silent. Even Lila stopped coloring. Talia wiped her eyes. "Then stop building walls," she whispered. He nodded. No arguments this time. No speeches. Just truth. As weeks passed, their sessions grew gentler. Marcus began showing up early, not to control the conversation, but to help Lila set up the crayons, pour juice, and sit quietly until Talia arrived. One afternoon, Lila climbed onto his lap mid-session and started braiding his tie like it was her doll's hair. The therapist smiled. "Looks like someone's comfortable," she said. Talia watched the scene, something soft crossing her face. She hadn't seen her daughter this light in years. It made the walls around her heart tremble. After one session, As they stepped outside into the cool spring air, Marcus turned to her. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" she asked. "For not giving up on me, even when you should have." Talia looked away. "I didn't do it for you." He nodded. "I know. You did it for her. But she gave me another chance, and you let her." That night, Talia found herself replaying his words. There was no manipulation in them, no attempt to buy affection, just quiet truth. As the weeks went by, something in Marcus changed. He began to share pieces of his past he'd never spoken aloud. One session, he told the story of his father, a man who never raised his voice but never raised his eyes either. Distant, cold. "When I was 10, Marcus said, I won a science fair. He didn't come. My mom said he was proud, but he never said the words. I thought that's what men were supposed to be, successful and silent. Turns out I just learned how to disappear the same way." Talia didn't interrupt. For once, he wasn't talking about power or control, just pain. He looked at her. "I don't want to own your world," he said softly. "I just want to belong in it." The room stayed quiet long after. That night, when Talia tucked Lila into bed, her daughter asked, "Mom, are you still mad at Daddy?" She hesitated. "No," she said finally. "I'm learning not to be." Lila smiled. "Then can we all go to the park together next time?" Talia smiled faintly. Maybe. The next weekend they did. It wasn't perfect. Lila ran too far ahead. Marcus tried too hard to make conversation. Talia caught herself laughing once and stopped too quickly. But it was something, a fragile start. Weeks later, the therapist gave them an assignment, a family journal. Each of them would write one sentence a day about how they felt. At first, it was awkward. Marcus's sentences read like reports. Today was productive. Lila enjoyed soccer. But over time, his tone softened. Lila's laugh made me forget the noise of the world. Talia smiled today. It felt like sunlight. When Talia read those entries, her chest ached, not from pain, but from something she hadn't felt in years. Belief. One evening, after a long day at work, Marcus showed up at Talia's apartment to drop off Lila's backpack. She was standing by the window, folding laundry. The city lights flickered behind her. "I was just leaving," he said, setting the bag down. But she stopped him. "You really meant it, didn't you?" He looked at her. "Meant what?" "That you don't want to own my world." Marcus took a breath. "I've owned everything except peace. I think I finally know where to find it." They stood there for a moment, the silence between them no longer sharp, just quiet. When he left, Talia stayed by the window, watching his car disappear into the traffic. For the first time, she didn't feel angry. She felt lighter. At their final session before a scheduled break, the therapist smiled. "You've all come a long way," she said. "But the real work isn't here, it's out there." Lila grinned, holding up another drawing. This time it wasn't stick figures. She'd drawn a house, a tree, and 3 people holding hands. Across the top, she'd written, "Home." Marcus couldn't speak. Talia reached over and squeezed his hand. It was a simple gesture, but for them, it meant everything. As they left the office, the city stretched wide and golden under the evening light. Marcus turned to Talia, voice quiet. "I can't promise I won't make mistakes, but I can promise I won't disappear again." Talia looked at him, eyes soft but steady. "Then maybe we can finally stop surviving," she said. And start living. They walked to the car, Lila skipping ahead, her laughter echoing down the street. For the first time, the sound didn't break Talia's heart, it healed it. When they reached the car, Marcus opened the door for her. A small thing, but it made her pause. She smiled faintly. "You're learning," she said. He smiled back. "I'm trying." As the car pulled away, Lila leaned her head on her mother's shoulder, whispering, "Are we happy now?" Talia looked at Marcus in the driver's seat, then back at her daughter. "We're getting there." The road ahead wasn't perfect. It wasn't supposed to be. But this time, they were driving it together. And somewhere deep down, Marcus realized, he'd spent years building an empire, but this small car, filled with laughter and forgiveness, felt more like home than anything he'd ever owned. Now he had everything to lose, and everything worth keeping. But as trust began to retake root, one question lingered in the back of his mind. Can love truly heal what silence once destroyed, or does it simply teach us how to begin again? The first real spring breeze in months carried the smell of grass, honey, and sunlight. Central Park was alive again. Kids running, dogs barking, couples stretched out on picnic blankets. For Marcus, it felt like the world itself had exhaled after a long winter. He arrived early, dressed simply. No tailored suit, no polished watch, just jeans, a soft gray sweater, and the same sneakers Lila had spilled paint on weeks before. He spread out the checkered blanket himself, unpacking the basket Talia had prepared. Homemade sandwiches, strawberries, Lila's favorite chocolate milk. Simple but perfect. When Talia and Lila arrived, Marcus froze for a moment. Talia wore a yellow sundress that caught the light in a way that made him forget to breathe. Lila skipped beside her, clutching a bag of breadcrumbs for the ducks. "You look," he started, then smiled, shaking his head. "Beautiful." Talia gave him a look that was part shy, part teasing. "You say that every time you see me, and every time it's still true." They sat, ate, and watched Lila chase ducks down the path, laughing so loud strangers turned to smile. The sound filled the space between them, softening every sharp memory that had ever stood in the way. For the first hour, they just talked, about nothing and everything. About how Lila had learned to spell entrepreneur, how Marcus had finally learned to cook eggs without burning them, how Talia was thinking about finishing her degree online. It was ordinary. But for them, ordinary was new. At one point, Lila ran up, cheeks flushed, eyes wide. "Daddy, can we feed them together?" Marcus nodded. "Of course." He followed her to the edge of the pond, both crouching as ducks gathered around. Lila tossed bits of bread, giggling when one snatched a piece from her hand. Talia watched them from the blanket, Marcus's hand hovering protectively near Lila's shoulder, his laughter light and unguarded. She hadn't seen him like that before. Not the CEO, not the polished billionaire. Just a man who finally knew what mattered. Then she noticed something else. The small, square bulge in his pocket. Her heartbeat slowed. Marcus turned toward Lila, voice barely above a whisper. "Hey, sweetheart," he said, pulling out the box. "Can I ask you something?" Lila blinked. "What is it?" He smiled, kneeling beside her. "Can I marry your mom?" For a second, she just stared, then burst out laughing, clapping her hands. "Yes, Daddy. You should. Mommy likes you now." The words hit Talia like sunlight through clouds. She froze, half smiling, half in shock. Marcus turned to her, eyes soft, heart pounding. "Talia," he said, standing slowly, walking toward her. Her hand flew to her mouth as he dropped to one knee. The entire park seemed to go silent. A jogger slowed to watch. A little boy nearby whispered to his mom. But in that moment, there was only them. Marcus opened the box. Inside was a simple gold band. No diamonds, no flash, no brand name. Just something real. His voice shook. You were my past, Talia. The part one never stopped missing. But you and Lila, you're my future. Talia's eyes flooded before she could stop them. Marcus, she whispered. He went on, his tone unsteady but full. I don't want to fix what we lost. I just want to build what comes next. I've spent years buying everything that doesn't matter. Now I just want the two things I can't buy, your trust and a lifetime with both of you. Talia laughed through her tears, shaking her head. You still talk like a man making a deal. Marcus smiled faintly. Then let this be the only deal I never want to renegotiate. Lila squealed, running over and grabbing his arm. Mommy, say yes. Please, please say yes. The crowd that had gathered chuckled softly. Talia looked around, laughing through her tears. Then she looked down at Marcus, this man who'd broken her heart once and spent every day since learning how to heal it. Her voice trembled. Yes. Marcus blinked, as if he hadn't heard right. Yes. Yes, she repeated, laughing, crying, everything at once. Yes. Marcus Sterling. I'll marry you. The park erupted in applause. A cyclist whistled. Someone yelled, Congrats, man. Marcus stood, pulling her into his arms. The world blurred around them. All he could feel was the warmth of her against him, the sound of Lila cheering. They're getting married. They're getting married. Talia's hands framed his face. You took your time, she said softly. I had to learn what forever really means, he whispered. And it's not a word. It's a choice, one I'll keep making. He slipped the ring onto her finger. Simple, perfect, real. They spent the rest of the afternoon under the shade of a cherry blossom tree. Lila fell asleep on the blanket, curled up with her stuffed bear. Marcus and Talia sat quietly, her head resting on his shoulder. You know, Talia murmured, I used to hate this park. Every time I saw a couple here, I wondered why that couldn't be me. Marcus turned to her. And now, she said with a smile, I think it's exactly where I was supposed to end up. He kissed her forehead. Then this is where everything begins. They stayed until the sun began to set, painting the sky in soft pink and orange streaks. Lila stirred, rubbing her eyes. Mommy, did you really say yes? Talia smiled. I did. Lila grinned, sleepily proud. Good. 'Cause Daddy's bad at waiting. They all laughed. Marcus reached for Talia's hand, squeezing it. She's right. As they walked toward the park gate, Lila between them, the evening breeze carried their laughter down the path. A photographer nearby snapped a picture. Unplanned, unposed. Just three people walking into a new life together. That photo would later hang in Marcus's office, right where his awards used to be. Weeks later, when the engagement made headlines, Marcus refused interviews. He didn't want to sell their story. This time, it wasn't for cameras. It was for them. He did, however, write one short post on his company's website. Success means nothing without someone to share it with. I learned that love isn't about possession or perfection. It's about presence. To Talia and Lila, thank you for teaching me what real wealth looks like. The comment section flooded with congratulations. But Marcus didn't read most of them. He was busy planning something new, something that would give meaning to everything they'd survived. Because in his mind, the proposal wasn't the ending. It was the beginning of purpose. And for the first time, Marcus felt certain about where his future was headed. But as they left the park that day, his arm around Talia and his daughter's hand gripping his own, one quiet thought flickered in his chest. Can love built from brokenness ever stay whole, or does its strength come from the cracks that hold it together? The morning air carried a soft chill, the kind that hinted at early spring in New York. Sunlight spilled through the tall glass facade of Sterling Towers, the very building that once symbolized Marcus's empire and his isolation. Today, it stood transformed. The lobby was filled not with shareholders or executives, but with families, community workers, and mothers holding the hands of their children. A banner stretched across the marble atrium, the Lila Foundation for Single Mothers, Empowerment, Education, Hope. Talia stood near the entrance, her reflection catching in the glass doors as guests arrived. She smoothed the front of her pale lavender dress, nerves fluttering beneath her calm expression. For years, this building had represented everything she'd left behind. Power, control, money. But now it was different. The flowers were soft white lilies and pink roses, not corporate orchids. The air smelled of something new. Possibility. Lila tugged on her hand. "Mom, can I go say hi to Mrs. Patel?" she asked, spotting one of the foundation's early volunteers, the same woman who once ran the daycare Talia relied on when she worked late shifts. Talia smiled. "Go ahead, sweetheart. Stay where I can see you." As her daughter skipped off, Talia turned toward the stage. Marcus was at the podium, talking quietly with the event coordinator. He was different now, not just in the way he dressed, though the navy suit and open collar made him look softer, but in the way he moved. The stiffness was gone. The carefully calculated gestures had been replaced by ease, by something real. When he noticed her watching, he smiled, genuinely, without the guarded confidence of the man he used to be. "You ready?" he asked, approaching with a folder in hand. "As ready as I'll ever be," she said with a nervous laugh. "Though I still can't believe this is happening." "Neither can I," he admitted. "6 months ago, I didn't know if you'd ever speak to me again. Now we're standing here, co-founders." Talia tilted her head, smiling faintly. "Life's funny like that. It's merciful," Marcus said, "when we let it be." The room quieted as the MC announced the start of the ceremony. Marcus took the stage first, his voice steady as he thanked the sponsors, the guests, and the volunteers who had turned an idea into something tangible. He spoke with confidence, but the usual polish of his speeches had been replaced by warmth. "This foundation," he began, "started with a simple question from a little girl who asked me once, 'Daddy, why don't more people get help when they need it?' I didn't have a good answer then. But I do now. They don't get help because sometimes the people who can help are too afraid to see, too afraid to care. I was one of them." The crowd listened in silence. Cameras flashed, but Marcus didn't flinch. "For years, I built walls instead of bridges. I measured success by what I could own, not who I could stand beside. And then life," he paused, catching sight of Lila sitting in the front row, swinging her pink shoes. "Life reminded me that love doesn't ask for perfection. It just asks that we show up." A soft murmur of applause filled the room. Marcus glanced at Talia, who stood near the stage, her eyes glistening. He continued, "This foundation is named after my daughter because she taught me something no business school ever could. That strength doesn't come from control, It comes from compassion. And it's dedicated to women like her mother, who taught me what it truly means to stand tall, even when the world turns its back. He stepped back, emotion tightening his voice. Because one woman taught me what strength looks like, and one little girl taught me what love truly means. Applause thundered through the atrium. Cameras flashed, but for once, the story wasn't about scandal or gossip. It was about growth, redemption, and the quiet triumph of forgiveness. Marcus gestured toward Talia, inviting her to the podium. The crowd hushed again as she took her place beside him. Talia looked out over the sea of faces. Mothers, children, journalists, and board members, all waiting. "When I first became a mother," she began, her voice soft but unwavering, "I promised myself I'd raise my daughter to believe in herself, even if the world told her she couldn't. I didn't know then that I'd have to make good on that promise alone. But I did. And in doing so, I learned something important. Strength isn't just about surviving. It's about refusing to let pain define you." She turned to Marcus briefly, her tone softening. "And sometimes, strength also means letting people back in." A ripple of emotion passed through the audience. Lila, sitting in the front row, waved from her seat. Her pink coat gleamed under the lights. "Go, Mommy!" she shouted. The crowd laughed, clapping in encouragement. Talia smiled through tears. This foundation exists because no woman should have to face her hardest days without support. Whether it's childcare, housing, education, or mental health resources, we're here to stand with those who've had to stand alone for too long. She took Marcus's hand as the applause swelled again. For the first time, their partnership wasn't about old wounds or unfinished conversations. It was about purpose. After the speeches, guests mingled among tables decorated with photos of the Foundation's early outreach projects, community centers, daycare sponsorships, career training programs. Lila ran around with a group of kids, handing out small gift bags labeled with the Foundation's logo. Reporters lingered near the back, whispering among themselves about Marcus Sterling's transformation. One headline would later read, "From boardroom to fatherhood, the billionaire who chose heart over power." But Marcus didn't care about the coverage anymore. He was too busy watching Lila climb onto Talia's lap, chattering about her favorite moment of the event. "Daddy, can we make another foundation next year?" she asked earnestly. He chuckled, brushing a loose curl from her forehead. "Let's make this one perfect first." Talia smiled, her hand finding his. "You're getting good at this," she said quietly. "What fatherhood?" "No," she teased. "Humility." He laughed, a sound that came easily now. "You taught me that too." As the event wound down, Marcus stepped out onto the terrace overlooking the city. The skyline shimmered under the fading light. He could hear the laughter inside, the life he once thought he'd lost forever. For a long time, he had chased success, believing it was the only thing that could fill the emptiness left by his father's distance. But standing here now, he realized that emptiness had only ever been waiting for something real to grow within it. Talia joined him, wrapping a light shawl over her shoulders. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Just thinking about how everything started right here. You, me, this building." She nodded. "Funny how things come full circle." He took her hand gently. "You know, I used to believe legacy meant skyscrapers and stock tickers. Now I think it's simpler. It's about the people who'll remember your name because you made their lives a little easier." She leaned against him. "That's a better kind of legacy." Lila appeared behind them, clutching her small teddy bear. "Mommy, Daddy, can we go home now?" Marcus looked down at her, his voice softening. "Yeah, sweetheart. Let's go home." As the three of them walked out of Sterling Towers, hand in hand, past the cameras and flashing lights, Marcus turned once more toward the building that had witnessed both his downfall and his redemption. For years, it had stood as a monument to ambition. Now, it was something far greater, a beacon of second chances. And in that moment, he knew, the real empire he'd built wasn't made of glass or steel. It was made of love, forgiveness, and the family walking beside him. The story comes full circle as Marcus's world, once defined by control and isolation, transforms into one of service and connection. Through love, he finds legacy. Through forgiveness, he finds peace. The city stretched beneath them like a sea of stars. From the rooftop of Sterling Towers, the lights shimmered across the skyline, each window glowing with a different story, a different life. But for Marcus, standing there with Talia and Lila, the only light that mattered was the one between them. It was late. The event had ended hours ago, but the adrenaline had yet to fade. Down below, the last of the staff cleared the lobby, the banners of the Lila Foundation gently swaying in the night breeze. Above, the wind hummed softly, tugging at Talia's hair and making Lila's pink coat flutter like a small flag of victory. Marcus stood quietly, one arm around Talia, the other around Lila, who clung sleepily to his side. For years, this rooftop had been his place of escape. He'd come here after long board meetings, staring down at the city and convincing himself he was content. Power, control, achievement. He thought they were enough. Tonight, it felt different. For the first time, he wasn't looking down at the world. He was standing inside it. Talia leaned into him, her voice barely above a whisper. "You used to come up here alone, didn't you?" He nodded. "All the time. I told myself it helped me think. But really, I just didn't want anyone to see how lost I was." She smiled faintly. "You don't seem lost anymore." "I'm not," he said. Then he looked down at the little girl beside him. "Because she found me." Lila yawned, resting her head against his arm. Her small voice was muffled when she spoke. "Daddy, are we famous now?" Marcus laughed softly. "Not famous, sweetheart. Just seen." She blinked sleepily, as though turning the word over in her mind. "I like that." Talia chuckled, running her fingers gently through Lila's hair. "You should. It's what your daddy's been learning all this time, to see and to be seen." For a moment, none of them spoke. The wind carried the sounds of the city, distant sirens, laughter from the streets, the hum of traffic below. Marcus's gaze traveled upward to the stars peeking through the haze. "You know," he said softly, "the day she called me Dad was the day my world stopped and finally started again." Talia's eyes glistened. "I remember. You looked like you couldn't breathe." "I couldn't," he admitted. "I'd spent years building a life that looked perfect from the outside, but that one word, it broke everything open. It made me realize what I'd been missing." He tightened his arm around them both. "I thought success was about winning, but it's really about staying, showing up, being there, even when it's hard." Lila stirred again, her eyes half closed. "Daddy, can you tell me a story before we go home?" Marcus smiled. "Right here." She nodded. He exchanged a glance with Talia, who grinned. "You heard the boss," she teased. Marcus took a deep breath and began, his voice low and steady. "Once upon a time, there was a man who had everything, except the things that mattered. He didn't know he was missing them, because no one had ever told him what love looked like. Then one day, a little girl walked into his life. She was brave and curious, and loud when she needed to be. She didn't care that he was important or rich. She just wanted him to play. Lila giggled softly, her hand clutching his. "That's me," she whispered. Marcus smiled. "Yes, it is." And because of her, that man finally learned what forever feels like. By the time he finished, her eyes had closed completely. Her breathing softened into a gentle rhythm. Marcus lifted her carefully into his arms. Talia reached up, brushing a hand over Lila's cheek, her expression full of tenderness. "She's grown so much," Talia said quietly. "She used to be scared of the world. Now she's part of it." Marcus nodded. "Because she had you." Talia turned to face him fully. "And now she has us." The word hung between them. Us, simple yet sacred. A word that had once felt impossible, now made real. Marcus looked out at the skyline again. Somewhere down there, headlines would be written, photos would circulate, stories would be told. But none of it mattered anymore. His name, his company, his reputation, they were footnotes. This was the real story. He exhaled slowly, the night air cool against his skin. "You know," he said, "I used to think everything had a price. Every deal, every decision, every dream." But then she said that word, Dad. And suddenly, I understood. The things that really matter can't be bought. They have to be earned. Talia reached for his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "You earned this," she said softly. "Every piece of it." He looked down at her, emotion rising in his chest. "No," he said. "We did." They stood in silence for a long while, watching the city breathe. Below them, sterling towers gleamed, no longer a monument to ambition, but a home to hope. Inside, banners bearing Lila's name still hung under the lights, fluttering gently like whispers of tomorrow. As they turned to leave, Marcus glanced one last time at the skyline, the city that had tested him, broken him, and finally taught him how to heal. He smiled faintly. Full circle. He whispered to himself, "In a world where everything has a price, I found the one thing money could never buy, the sound of my daughter calling me Dad." He closed his eyes, letting the words settle in his heart. Then, with Talia beside him and Lila asleep in his arms, Marcus Sterling walked toward the elevator, the man who once had everything, now holding everything that truly mattered. From empire to family, from distance to belonging. Marcus Sterling's journey was never about redemption in the eyes of the world, but reconciliation within himself. His legacy was not in the towers that bore his name, but in the laughter of his daughter and the quiet strength of the woman who taught him how to love.